The transfer portal was supposed to be a place where Notre Dame could surgically reinforce a roster already built on elite high school recruiting, a supplemental marketplace where experience and immediate help could be added without compromising long-term identity. Instead, as January has unfolded, it has felt more like a series of near misses and mounting frustrations, a reminder of just how unforgiving and fast-moving the modern college football economy has become. Since the portal opened on January 2, head coach Marcus Freeman and his staff have watched one target after another drift away, committing elsewhere before Notre Dame could fully gain traction. Weeks into the window, the Irish still have no commitments to show for their efforts, and now another potential setback looms, one that cuts particularly deep because of both need and fit. Former Penn State defensive tackle Xavier Gilliam, long viewed as a priority target and a potential anchor for the future of Notre Dame's defensive front, is now projected to land at Tennessee, a development that underscores the uphill battle Freeman faces in this cycle. Gilliam's emergence as a portal prize has been steady rather than flashy, built on projection, physical tools, and the kind of quiet productivity that defensive line coaches covet. Ranked among the top defensive tackle transfers available and firmly inside the top 10 at his position, according to multiple evaluations, Gilliam represents the exact profile Notre Dame hoped to secure, a proven Big Ten lineman with 3 years of eligibility remaining, someone who could grow within the program rather than serve as a one-year rental. In 2 seasons at Penn State, Gilliam's trajectory pointed upward, with the 2025 season standing as his most impactful stretch. 16 total tackles, 12 of them solo, a half sack, and a forced fumble may not leap off the stat sheet, but they hint at a player beginning to understand leverage, assignment discipline, and how to affect plays without always being the one credited in the box score. For a Notre Dame defense looking ahead to 2026 and beyond, particularly one in need of fresh firepower and depth along the interior defensive line, Gilliam looked like an ideal addition. The problem, once again, is timing, competition, and the shifting realities of the portal landscape. Notre Dame is not alone in missing out on Gilliam. Indiana also hovered in the background, illustrating how wide the net has become for top portal talent. Programs that once might have been considered secondary players are now aggressive, well-funded, and unafraid to move quickly. Tennessee's apparent momentum in Gilliam's recruitment is emblematic of a broader trend that has left Notre Dame searching for answers. The Irish are still recruiting with conviction, still selling development, culture, and long-term success, but in a market increasingly driven by immediacy and resources, those pitches do not always land the way they once did. For Freeman, the situation is particularly delicate. He has been transparent about Notre Dame's philosophy of majoring in high school recruiting and minoring in the transfer portal, a balance that has worked in the past when the right players were identified and acquired at the right moments. That approach helped Notre Dame plug critical holes with experienced transfers in previous cycles, stabilizing the roster without over-reliance on portal turnover. But this January has exposed the risks of that strategy when the portal becomes less of a supplement and more of a battleground. Missing out on Gilliam would not simply be another name crossing off the board. It would represent another opportunity lost to address a clear positional need with a player who fit Notre Dame's long-term vision. The defensive line in particular is an area where experience matters, where young players benefit from having veterans ahead of them who understand the grind of college football and the nuances of trench play. Notre Dame's depth up front has been tested, and while the program continues to develop talent internally, the reality is that reinforcements are needed. Gilliam would have brought not only physical ability, but also familiarity with high-level competition, the kind of seasoning that cannot be rushed. Watching him potentially head to Knoxville is a tough pill to swallow for a staff that identified him as a solution. As the portal clock continues to tick, Freeman faces a difficult recalibration. The Irish can continue to swing for the biggest names, hoping that patience and persistence eventually yield a breakthrough, or they can widen the lens, targeting lesser-known players with upside and trusting their developmental infrastructure to maximize those pieces. Neither path is without risk. Settling for smaller names may quiet immediate concerns, but could leave questions about ceiling and impact. Continuing to chase top-tier transfers, meanwhile, risks more public misses and further frustration among a fan base already uneasy with the slow start. What makes this moment particularly challenging is that it arrives at a time when Notre Dame's broader trajectory remains strong. The foundation is there, the recruiting classes are talented, the program's national relevance is intact, and yet the portal has become an unavoidable component of roster building, one that can expose even the most stable programs to turbulence. The Irish are learning in real time that yesterday's methods may not be sufficient for today's market, where supply and demand shift rapidly and hesitation can be costly. Gilliam's projected move to Tennessee feels less like an isolated loss and more like a symbol of the broader adjustment Notre Dame must make. The Irish are not out of options, but the margin for error is shrinking. Freeman and his staff will need to read the room more accurately, move with greater urgency, and perhaps rethink how aggressively they engage in this space. The portal is not forgiving, and it does not wait for programs to find their footing. For now, Notre Dame appears to be back at the drawing board, reassessing priorities and recalibrating expectations. Hope remains that solutions will emerge before the window closes, that experience can still be added, and that this cycle will not define the Irish's future. But the early days of this portal season have made one thing clear: standing still is not an option. If Notre Dame is going to keep pace in an era where player movement is constant and competition is relentless, adaptation is no longer a choice, but a necessity. Freeman's challenge is to turn these early setbacks into lessons, to find value where others may not be looking, and to ensure that this frustrating chapter becomes a footnote rather than a turning point. In 2024, Notre Dame lost the national championship to Ohio State. In 2025, the Irish came into the season with a chip on their shoulder. They started out 0-2 and then went on to win 10 straight games to get themselves into the college football playoff. Finally, Notre Dame was completely snubbed from the playoff after being in the field in every single CFF ranking. That is a lot for one team to go through in a little over a year. Now it feels like Notre Dame is fired up and a team that will not be stopped in 2026. Marcus Freeman is the type of coach to use all of those hardships and get his team into the right mindset to compete at the highest level. Now, Freeman's job is to build the best roster possible so that the Irish don't leave their fate in the selection committee's hands again. With the portal open on January 2, Freeman knows he has to go get the best of the best, and the official visits set for this week prove he is trying to do just that.